Hey everybody, Ty here, Small Acre Hunting, and on today's episode we are going to be talking about a few different topics. It's going to kind of be a catch-all episode. Sorry, I just bumped my mic down here, but we're going to be talking about the CJ Alexander case a little bit since I shared a post and I had some private messages about it. We're going to talk about hunting practice, not necessarily bow practice. We're going to talk about my new bow that I'm going to be bringing in. Discuss that very briefly because a few people had questions because they heard on the last episode I'm going to be getting a new bow, what I decided, where I'm going, things of that nature. And then food versus bedding conversation and why that is so crucial to my decisions this off season and the things that I'm going to be doing on my property and Pops's place. Two very different properties, and I'm just going to kind of give an overview of both of those, but I think it's a topic that a lot of people wrestle with every single year. And I want you to not be so intimidated by that. But that and a little bit more on this episode of the Small Acre Hunting Podcast.
You are listening to the Small Acre Hunting Podcast, the hunting podcast that is free of advertisements, bought and paid for opinions, and minutes of sponsorships. If that's what you want, there's a plethora of other podcasts out there. Here, we're going to talk openly, we're going to talk honestly, and we're going to live in the real world. Free of sponsorships and paid for advertisements and opinions that are governed and dictated by them. If that sounds interesting, stay tuned for this episode of the Small Acre Hunting Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode, the second episode of 2025. And it's been a while since I've sat down 2 weeks in a row and recorded something, but I was like, I was driving my son to preschool this morning and I had a lot of stuff on my mind. I had some messages coming in about the CJ Alexander case. I had some people messaging me about my bow and some of the stuff that I talked about on the last episode. And I was like, you know what? I just got a lot of thoughts. Let's just sit down and we'll just bullet point and work through them really quick. This is not going to be a one topic podcast, but it's also, hopefully, I don't have quite as much time today to talk, so hopefully it'll be a little bit quicker. But let's just start with, yesterday I posted and I shared a video that was made, and anybody who really wants to understand DNR cases, what conservation officers have to go through from a warden's perspective, the research, the analysis, and the evidence in cases, you got to check out Warden's Watch. Just look, Warden's Watch has a great YouTube channel. He actually has a website as well. I've never actually went to it. I guess I could go to it right now. But wardenswatch.com, you'll be able to find it from there. In essence, I've never met this guy. I literally just started watching his channel the other day. But Wayne Saunders is a retired lieutenant conservation officer from New Hampshire. So he lived it. And he offers an incredible perspective, and he kind of breaks down poaching cases and things of that nature, sheds light on what strengths and weaknesses might exist in cases. But he has, in the last day, basically dropped 3 different episodes, all having to do with the CJ Alexander buck. Episode 139 kind of lays out the facts. I really think everybody, that's the one I posted on my social media page on Facebook on Small Acre Hunting. Check that one out. It's called episode 139, CJ Alexander, The Facts. And the amount of research and investigation that these COs did and the amount of information they gathered on CJ, his fiance, his friends. I'm telling you right now, it is disgusting. The mindset of him, the mindset of his fiance, and everybody involved. I mean, to think that people like this exist and are just blatantly not even an ounce of them cares at all to respect other property owners, respect hunters, I said on a forum, when I read and I saw all these text messages and how they literally knew what they were doing was wrong. And they were hoping that the landowner wouldn't catch them. And they were trying to take precautions. Somebody would come and pick him up well after dark. And he would hide where he was at. He would wear all black so that way he wouldn't stand out. All these different things It's disgusting. And the morals, I'm not saying they're as bad as everybody in jail and prison, but their moral compass is only shared by people who are currently sitting in jail cells and prison cells. Like, there's no doubt in my mind these people, if they were willing to go to this length and plan this much for a deer, I guarantee you these people were doing other things. Like, you just don't live your life this void of morals and this be the only thing you're doing wrong. And just the simple fact that in the days after killing this deer illegally, CJ went on numerous podcasts. I mean, he made a household name for himself, duped everybody that was interviewing him. And there's even an article, or there's a part where even though he knows what he did was wrong, he's still proud of being able to harvest such an incredible animal. Like, he has no morals, but I actually genuinely think he's just an idiot. Like, I think there's a fool inside of him to a degree that is just unmeasurable, because he has no ability to discern what's right and wrong clearly. But check out Warden's Watch, watch the facts, and then the one that I'm getting ready to watch, I haven't even checked it out, I didn't know this one dropped. The same day, Warden's Watch dropped an episode where he interviews, I'm assuming it says the CJ Alexander buck, the officer's interview. So he's actually, it looks like there's 2 CO officers, they're probably the 2 that investigated it, and that's probably a very, very amazing conversation. Like, one aspect that I found incredible was some of the photos, and originally CJ claimed there was no photos taken during the day when he harvested the animal, but then social media and text messages exist to the contrary. And when the officers saw a couple of photos and they could see the tree types in it, they knew exactly where on this property that the suspected poaching occurred to start looking, and they found the exact branch that's in the background on one of these photos. It's incredible. And then in that general area, they found some, orange string that he used, a empty ice bag that he used to keep the deer cool, and then also a knife that CJ originally said wasn't his, and then he redacted it, or he came back and he admitted that it was. I mean, just... and here's the frustrating thing for me, and then I'll be done on this CJ Alexander, because the crazy thing is I've already said his name more than he ever deserves. But the thing that, for lack of a better term, pisses me off is there is a lot of people out there that associate his name with hunters. So we're roped into the same hunting community that he is, to a lot of people. And that's why I have long said, if you are going to choose to be a hunter, and you are not going to be a hermit, meaning you are actually on forums, you're on social media, you're sharing, you're talking to people at store, you go to the bow shop, you go to the range, you talk to other hunters, you have to be willing to help all of us trying to make the hunting community be something to be proud of, to be part of. What I mean by that is, if you hear somebody saying something that they're doing that is illegal, call them out. If you don't want to contact law enforcement, you need to at minimum talk to them and call them out. Let them know that what they're doing is wrong, and if they don't change, you are going to turn them in. I will turn my own father in if I found out that he illegally harvested a deer. Like, no holds barred. He knows that. Like, it's just, I care, maybe I care too much. That's a valid, maybe, perhaps there's some validity in that. But I would argue that there is a lot of people out there, and there's probably some guys listening to this podcast right now, that don't care enough. They don't care enough. They live for the gray area in laws. They live for, it's not illegal if you don't get caught. I pray that you get caught in everything that you do. But check out the CJ Alexander buck. The charges here, I'll just work through the things because some people ask and you may not take the time to look it up. Basically, He has to serve 180 days in jail with 90 days suspended and the other 90 days served at the Star Community Justice Center before he can be eligible for work release. His sentence also includes an up to 36-month suspended prison term that becomes active if community control is revoked. He has to serve 5 years of community control. That is awesome. And it sounds like if he ever fails to, comply to all that, 33 months in prison. He has to pay $39,696.73 to the Ohio Wildlife Fund and $2,000 in restitution to KSE Sportsman Media, doing business as Outdoor Sportsman's Group -IM. I don't know what that is, or why he would owe them money. I have no idea. Maybe it's an Ohio program of some sort. He has to pay $1,000 in restitution to the Poaching Hotline. That's awesome. And $1,000 wildlife fine and court costs. Enter a 4 to 6 month community-based program through the Star Community Justice Center. Must be additional community service or a program for offenders or something. He has to write letters of apology to affected parties. Those are going to be about as genuine as a... If you watch the Warden's Watch, he goes over text messages he received from CJ. The blatant disregard for truth and facts and the way he talked to him, to the guy who runs Warden. Like, CJ, I hope you listen to this. You are the definition of poaching scum. Done. He has to forfeit all hunting-related property seized by the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Division of Wildlife as evidence. He loses his hunting license for a minimum of 10 years. If full restitution is not paid by them, the license remains revoked until full payment is made. 4 other people that assisted him in taking or covering up the poaching of this buck were also sentenced. And there's links in the cases and such that you can go to. Maybe I'll try to provide a link in the YouTube description of this. So if you're listening to this on the audio, go to my YouTube channel. There'll be some in the description. I'll try to post some links at minimum to Warden's Watch, so you can get there, so you can watch those, and I'll try to copy the Ohio Attorney General page. But basically, he got some stuff handed down to him. I'm assuming there are states, typically reciprocity, or one state will honor another state's issue. So I think he's going to have a lot of trouble finding a place to hunt. That seems to be more and more the norm across state lines. Sorry, needed a drink of my coffee. But yeah, just a disgusting thing, and I hate that buck. Now, granted, that world-class buck was living on a very isolated, non-hunted place. Not a lot of people were seeing it. There was very few hunters that had access to property that could potentially have harvested that deer, but CJ stole any opportunity for that animal to be legally harvested by a hunter and just provide them an incredible memory. That's one of the disgusting parts of it. But check it out. It's well worth watching. I'm actually going to sit down and probably watch some of the Warden's Watch other cases. I mean, he's got 140 episodes, so I'm assuming he's probably broken down quite a few cases. And who knows? I think that would be an interesting conversation to have him on, talk about some of the cases that he worked. The viewpoint of a conservation officer, I think, is something that's always interesting. But let's switch gears. So last episode I talked about how I think any bow hunter has a mindset of, I'm very conservative to the point of where I need to work on expanding my confidence because I am a good shot. I do practice a ton. And I know I can execute a shot over 30 yards, but I hesitate to it, and I need to expand. And then there's a lot of people that are on the other side. They're way too aggressive. They throw out all reason. They become an idiot with a bow, and they're just launching arrows, trying and hoping. Now, I will say that's very negative. I think there are some cases. I have a really good friend. We share a lot of messages. It's actually a group of 3 of us, and Pastor Andrew, I want to have him on because he has tracking dogs, and I think some of the perspective and stories and things that he observes on tracking is something we all can learn from. But he was even saying in a message, they were joking that I was talking about them, which was not the case. But he mentioned how, he's a little bit older than me. I don't know exactly how much older, but his abilities with a bow have dropped just because of time. I mean, he's a father of, I think they have 4, I think. Very busy guy. Just, he doesn't shoot and practice as much as when he was younger. And our eyesight begins to diminish. Our capabilities begin to diminish. I used to pull 70-pound bows back like it was a breeze. Now I purposely shoot 63 to 65 pounds because I want to still be able to draw as easy as I used to. Things change over time too. Some of us, maybe shooting 40 yards was no problem. It was ethical. We weren't pushing our limits. And then now, 2 decades later, maybe we are pushing our limits. And I think the bare minimum, and I don't want to rehash that whole episode, but I hope it at least caused reflection in guys. And I know that it did, because I had numerous people reach out and say they appreciated it. Some people disagreed with it, but they understood it. Some people were like, amen, I need to actually rethink and do the same process that you're doing, or the same process, but it's actually in reverse. Like, I'm trying to get more aggressive because I'm far too conservative, arguably, and they're far too aggressive and they need to get a little bit more conservative. So it was great exchanges, but it prompted a really good discussion. Now, I've posted a few short videos, and I think Chasing Giants TV shared a short one time, but I'm a firm believer that there's a big difference between practicing with your bow and practicing hunting, like hunting practice with your bow. I think far too many guys only ever practice with field points. Now, I understand some people, it is because of fiscal reasons, because they don't want to shoot their broadheads. Okay, let's tackle that conversation really quick. If you are shooting a fixed head, you need to be like, okay, I used to shoot slick tricks, okay? Killed a lot of deer with slick tricks, just slick trick standard and slick trick magnums. Those blades are easily replaceable. And I at minimum, I bought 2 packages at first. I kept 3 for my hunting, and I practiced with 3. I think that's better than practicing with your field points, but I have become a very firm believer. The same heads that I hunt with should be the heads that I practice with. And if they're well done, high quality heads, shouldn't be an issue, shouldn't be a problem. You can always switch out the blades, but that ferrule, that head, needs to be the one that you're taking to the field. Because then every little change can impact things. That's just common sense. Everybody knows this. If you shoot mechanical heads, you at minimum, if it's a good quality company, you should be able to get practice heads. Some of them ship a practice head. Even if they don't, most of the blades, again, are replaceable. You should be shooting your head. I understand the profile of a mechanical head is very similar to a field point, but it's not exact. Don't assume flight is going to be perfect at 35, 40 yards if you're pushing it to that degree. You are doing yourself a disservice and your target, and in a small way the hunting community as well, because you represent hunting to somebody out there, which can impact other people who are in the hunting community. So practicing with your bow, I think shooting a lot, creating muscle memory, your anchor point being extremely consistent, that can occur with your broadhead. But we've got to break the habit of only ever practicing with field points. We've got to practice what we hunt with. We have to practice hunting with our bow. And the only way to do that is if you put the broadheads on, if you shoot with your quiver attached. I'm a quiver attached type of guy. I like it affixed all the time. I'm going to get into my bow of choice. One of the reasons why I chose the bow I did, that was a factor. But you need to shoot your broadhead. And I encourage everybody to shoot a fixed, personally, high quality steel head. Just a good, and learn to sharpen your broadheads. For the longest time, I've shot grizzly sticks. These are both the red label, the Overkill. These are 200 grain single bevel broadheads. I've got the black label ones. I got a couple of those. The black label ones are a little bit better steel, but I've shot the Overkill ones through some shoulder blades, some scapulas, and not had an issue. Now I will say a couple of those shoulders, like the 13-minute buck that I shot back in 22. Well, he's actually right there. Doesn't look great from the front, but he's an amazing deer. He's got a lot of character to him, a lot of points going everywhere. But I shot through his scapula down towards the ball, and I did have to end up throwing that head out. I think I still have it, but the edge got some knockings out of it, but that thing popped that bone, and there was a splinter line through it. I mean, it did exactly what a single bevel head should do, but I used to just buy new ones of those. Like, I would save up my money, because the black label ones are over 100. The Overkill, I think, are around 80 for 3. But I've learned to sharpen now, and it's changed everything. Like, if I take my time and I learn to strop, well, you can get those things to cutting hair off your arm without much effort. And so now I practice even more with my broadheads. Targets are more expensive. When you get into shooting your broadheads, you got to get a target that can handle broadheads, which I think that's the main reason why I don't practice with broadheads year round. It's because I just burn through so many targets. So I understand that side of it, but practicing hunting with your broadheads is one thing. And then also I am a huge proponent, and everybody knows this because I've shared it before, but I'm going to share it again because I think it's a crucial aspect of our practice that more guys need to do. One-shot practice. One-shot practice. I know it's hard because we're living very busy lives to slip out, shoot one arrow, and then have a break. You know, you might have 20 minutes, maybe the kid's down for a nap, or they're watching a movie, or you just got them food and you're like, I'm gonna go shoot for a little bit. I understand that, but once you get, I would say a month minimum, what you need to focus on is shooting your broadheads and one shot at a time. You're not going to get to work on a group of 3 to 6 arrows or shoot 20 at a deer when you're out hunting. You get one shot almost all the time. You're gonna get one shot. Yes, you may get a follow-up, you may get lucky, maybe they don't know, like rare things happen, but you're gonna get one shot most likely. So that first shot with your broadhead each time needs to be isolated and treated as its own approach. Get to the point where you're executing that and your confidence level is only gonna go up. Only gonna go up. I remember I had a buddy start doing this, and he texted me and he said, I've never been more confident going into the hunting season. For 2 months he did this, and he said at first he realized how slightly off he was, and he said, I never changed anything, but I just got more used to trying to really focus, hone in, work through his progression of his draw and everything. And that first shot went from being within like a 4 or 5 inch circle, which is still going to kill most of the time, but a 4 or 5 inch circle, I mean, if you hit 4 inches off, that could be the difference between center punching both lungs, depending on the angle, and just one lunging a deer, one lung liver, or one lung nothing. I mean, guts, I mean, you don't know. And he got to the point where he was like, I could put it in, you know, a 2.5 inch circle that first shot every time. And so I encourage you, do that. Think about it. Both practicing, you know, shooting your bow a lot is a good thing. Don't ever shoot past fatigue to a point where you have bad habits and you're starting to slip up on your approach and you're not anchoring in the same consistent spot. But consider it. It's definitely worth it. Really briefly, somebody asked me what bow did I decide. So I got that V3 and I loved it, but I never felt like it was, it never felt like mine. I've had one bow that felt like it was an extension of me in my life. Even my Mission Venture, which I loved, I wouldn't say. My Elite 32 was like, I don't know what it was. I just, that bow fit me very well. Well, when I started looking at the 2025 bows, I started looking around, and I know most of the bows draw cycles, and I really like Elite's draw cycle. For whatever reason, it fits me. But Elite's customer service sucks. I'm just going to be honest. And it's frustrating. It frustrates my bow shop friends. Many of them have tried to carry Elites. Some of them still do, but they don't really push them because they don't want to deal with the company, which is sad because I really think Elite makes a very, very good bow. Honestly, a lot of the flagships make incredible bows. I ended up settling, and I am sticking with Matthews. I'm getting the Lift X, and I'm getting the 29.5. I would say the main reasons, one, I know I like the draw cycle. I know I like Matthews. I've never been, and a lot of people are in the same boat as me, I always liked Elite's handle and grip much more than Matthews. Well, Matthews now offers like 4 different grips. They've got the engage, the contour, the taper, and then side plates, depending on what you like. If you like more narrow, if you like more cupped, the angle changes on each of them. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to find a grip that suits me far more than their original. I don't think I'm going to go with the engage. I'm either going to end up going with the contour or taper, unless both of those still feel a little too bulky. I like the narrowness. Then I'll go side plates, and I might even do a wrap. I don't know. But I really love Matthews. I love the company. I love the people behind it. I love what they do. I'm connected to Chasing Giants TV is not sponsored by Matthews, but they do sponsor Don's Chasing Giants podcast. So, kind of supporting a friend through my purchase, but not necessarily directly. That would never have ruled in my decision making entirely. One of the main reasons why I like Matthews is the way that they're doing their integrated quiver system, and it sets in more. It's about as in as you can possibly get on the bow, is because I like shooting fixed quivers. I couldn't afford it on my V3, so I ran a Redline quiver, which I don't dislike, but it defeats the purpose of having the bow designed to have a quiver inset and inlet more. So I'm going to be getting a fixed quiver. I'm going to get the Matthews fixed. I forget what they call it. There's a name for it, and it's going to bug me, so I'm going to have to look it up. This really shouldn't be the case, but it is what it is. It's going to bug me unless I do this. I'm loading their custom bow because I've got it all worked out. I'm either doing an all black riser with shale limbs, or I'm doing a shale to black riser, which should have a shale top and a black bottom and red accents, type of stuff, because I've actually, believe it or not, really like Redline stuff. Low pro. It's just low pro. Oh my gosh, it's not even, took way too long for that. But anyways, that's one of the reasons I like that balance point. The more you can get a quiver in line, the less you have to counteract your hand on the bow and the grip, and you're not likely to be torquing or twisting it. I may experiment with running a sidebar stabilizer, or even my front stabilizer if I don't use the bridge lock. I may offset my front stabilizer an inch or two with an off bracket to see if I can that thing just sets steady in my hand with the quiver, because that's the one thing. If you shoot with a quiver attached, you've got to look and see how easily does it set balanced in your hand, or are you having to fight it with your hand, because any kind of fighting with your hand could impact the shot, because how consistent are you in your leverage point on your hand every single time? That's the worry that I had. So that's what made me go with the Matthews lift because of that. So that's just very briefly something like that. The final thing that I wanted to talk about on this episode was kind of a teaser towards a lot of guys are right now trying to figure out what they're going to do with their property. They sat up the stand all hunting season and saw things that they don't quite like. They want to change this, they want to enhance that, but they're maybe not quite sure, and they're just thinking, you know, what do I really want to do? And for those of us on a small property, we always have to play the gambling game of, am I going to lean to food more? Is that my objective? Or is bedding cover the objective? Because we have such limited space, it's a much bigger decision than a lot of guys have to worry about. You know, I got buddies that have hundreds of acres, or guys that have 60, 70, 80 acres, and it's not as big of a deal for them. But guys, I'm telling you, when you start getting beneath 30 acres, 20 acres, 12 acres, we have to start thinking in almost square footage instead of acreage. We have to consider how much square foot of our property is in bedding. You know, if we take this half acre out and it's a little bit less cover, but we're adding food, what does that happen to our daytime carrying ability of the property? And are we negatively changing our daytime activity because now we're just a little too much just food, and the deer aren't going to want to live there during the day, and that's when we want to kill them. But then vice versa, there's also the option of, if you don't have enough food on your property, the deer are going to vacate it entirely at times of the year. And depending on what food is around you, they may go use a slightly inferior bedding area if they can find one closer to that food or buy that food, and they're going to vacate yours. And I think one of the big reasons why we try to incorporate both on a property is, if you think of it this way, if all you focus on is bedding, a deer could leave your property in any general direction. Now, they could do this regardless of what you do. Yes, a deer can get up off of my property and its bedding options and go any direction if they want. But giving them secure food options adjacent or close to their bedding encourages travel, and I would say makes it more likely that when they get up out of their bed, they're going to go to these food sources first and then go off on, in the evening time in the cover of darkness, to larger destination type food. So we can't ignore having food, but I think a lot of times guys think way too much of food and not enough of cover. I'm revamping, and I'm revamping my thought process, because I think my place could be so much better if I open up my mind to considering what the neighboring properties are, even more so than I already do. I've talked to you guys numerous times. One of the first things I do when somebody asks me to look at their property is I zoom out on the macro and I look and see, okay, this is their checkerboard piece, but what's going on the pieces all around it? I've wanted to always provide everything on my property, and I'm still going to do that, but I think what I can start doing is understanding what's occurring elsewhere and let that impact mine. And then if what is occurring elsewhere ever changes, I change with it. I actually am working, I'm one of the few people that have permission on the neighboring piece to do anything. We're in conversations with the landowner to potentially be able to start doing things on it, which would be incredible. I've got some plot ideas, I've got some cover site blocking ideas and things of that nature. So if that happens, I'll share that. But I don't want you to it's so easy to get lost in the weeds of which should I do, which should I not. Cover is still going to always be king for me. I don't necessarily need to be able to feed a deer via a plot. I don't need to kill them on a plot. I don't need to kill them on a transitional plot. I don't need to kill them on an adjacent to bedding plot. But I need them on my property in the daytime. And for them to do that, for them to be doing that, there's got to be cover. They're not bedding in the wide open plot. I've got to give them cover. And one of the things that I have over time allowed to happen because of time and ability to hit the property and do things is I've got some dead zones. I've got some areas that have been created that are too thick with bush honeysuckle, or they're a tree line that I've just kind of avoided enhancing. Areas that I've allowed to grow up and mature too much. They used to be a fallow field. Now they're a whole swath or thicket of cottonwoods that are starting to just be way too thick and congested, and the forest floor starting to die down and deer aren't bedding there. So I have these areas that are not being conducive or useful to me anymore and the deer, and I need to pay attention to those. So I guess that's one thought for it. A few things, really brief. I mean, we're at the 35 plus minute mark, but a few of the things you guys know that I with a skidster, I went in and I started eradicating some bush honeysuckle thickets. I'm going to extend that down even farther. Some of you have asked, what am I doing to the old areas that are like that? So a couple things. One, this year, Pops and I are going to go in and selective herbicide spray any bush honeysuckle that's popping back up. We planted a ton of, what was there? Buttonbush, gray dogwood. There was some red osier dogwood. Choke cherry, I think was the one. A lot of understory type brush, bush type things we planted. Gonna protect anything else that pops up. Discovered a couple apple trees that were in there. And I'm just gonna keep expanding that, creating that more fallow field type growth, which is way more useful to the deer than that bush honeysuckle thicket ever was. I did throw some big blue stem out there. I found some cheap seed. Who knows how good it was. Some of that grew, but not a ton, and that's fine. That's occurring. Gonna be going up into my one bedding area because we've had some more of the girdled trees that we did years ago, fall. Making sure that there's arteries for deer to move around in the bedding area, some areas to breathe, some areas for them to bed. Your bedding area can get too thick, and that's why once or twice a year I recommend actually going into those areas. We don't try to do that a lot, and I don't ever go in to shed hunt. I don't think it's worth it. An antler doesn't teach me anything. I already know the deer exists. It just doesn't do much for me. They end up setting on something, or I give it to somebody else, whatever. That's just me. So I don't abuse my bedding areas to shed hunt. The only time I abuse or intrude on my bedding areas is to do work. So keep that in mind. I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be expanding my food plot some. You know, there's always some of those edges around food plots that are not really working. They're not really a shield, a sightline blockade, or doing anything like that. You might be able to shave a few more square feet into food. Sometimes on the south side of a bedding, or on the south side of a food plot, trees have grown up to the point where they're starting to impede on the sunlight. Now the whole southern edge of the plot is more filtered light instead of direct light, and you can make a difference, and that can make a massive difference on the tonnage that your food plot provides. And it maybe only takes eliminating 6 or 8 trees along that edge. So that's just a lot of different things that I'm going to be doing hopefully this off season. At Pops's place, his property is in a river bottom, like it's in a floodplain. If it rains a lot, you're not even going in there. So the one thing that we are going to have to do, they logged it really hard. He had a logger come in. There's a lot of light. We're going to be on second full year of regrowth. It's getting really thick. But the issue for him is he doesn't feel like the deer can traverse and move around the property as much as they should. So what we're going to have to do is with a chainsaw, we're just going to have to start walking around, making trails. And anytime we see those high ground clumps, whether it be the size of a sheet of plywood, or I hit that again, sorry. Whether it be the size of a sheet of plywood, or it is the size of a bedroom or a room, grab it, clear it, give bedding option, because we need to give them as much bedding ground as possible, especially in certain parts of the property away from where we're entering and exiting. So it's gonna be a good property. He's killed deer out there every day. He just hasn't killed a buck. I think he killed one doe out there this year or two. I can't remember, but yeah, it is what it is. I do have an interesting story to share with everybody. I think I hinted at it, but I didn't kill a buck this last year, kind of. And that's where I'm going with one of these episodes. I'm gonna break down. I had an encounter with a sick button buck in October, and I ended up sadly having to put this deer down that day. It was not healthy. It's not how it's supposed to go down. But I'll share that whole story. He ended up getting tested. He had a brain abscess, so it made sense why he was just acting so weird. But I've got some footage of that deer, and I'll share that in upcoming episodes. That and a lot more. So if you have any thoughts, share them in the comments below. Message me, email me. If you have any questions, if there's anything that you'd like to hear me discuss, just because you'd like to hear a guy ramble about things, hit me up. Some of the greatest topics are recommended by you guys. Also, I'm going to be relaunching the Patreon page. So again, I don't take money from anybody at all. This project, Small Acre Hunting, and the podcast is completely unfunded. But if you want to encourage and provide, you can join the Patreon. I'm going to try to remember to upload stuff to them alone first. But even if I do forget that, those who become a Patreon, I think the lowest level is going to be like $1 or $2 a month. It might be $3 a month, but so very low cost to you. You're going to get entered into some giveaways, and I'm going to give away some products, probably some food plot seed, maybe a couple companies that I have good relationships with, but I'm not connected with. Maybe they'll donate something. But yeah, I appreciate every single one of you. We're entering that habitat season where a lot of our deer seasons are closing down. These deer are getting stressed with the winter. If you can run a chainsaw, drop some trees, they're gonna appreciate you like you'll never believe. But we're entering that time period where now's where we start our 2025 season. Opening day of 2025 season is not the first day that you can shoot a deer. It's the first day that you start changing and working towards the 2025 season. So this is Ty. God bless and good luck out there.